In today's readings, we heard about a very discouraged prophet, Jeremiah, and a very misguided apostle, St. Peter. Both of them, while trying to live out their role as prophet and apostle, were struggling with personal failings and shortcomings. They were human beings. Let's consider Peter first. If you recall last week in the gospel, Jesus had assigned Peter the role of the rock to be the foundation of the church. That designation of rock must have built up Peter's ego and self-confidence. He was pointed out by Jesus. You, Peter, will become the rock in which I will build my church. He must have felt pretty good about that. So in the gospel today, he boldly decides to instruct Jesus to avoid the cross. He says, God forbid, Lord, no such thing shall ever happen to you. No such thing can happen to you. And while his intention was noble, Peter was making a profound mistake. He was misunderstanding completely God's plan. Jesus lets Peter know in no uncertain terms how wrong he really is. Jesus says, get behind me, Satan. You are an obstacle in my path because you are thinking not as God thinks, but as human beings think. Last week, Peter was a rock, the foundation on which the church was built. This week, Peter is an obstacle to God's plan. Last week, Peter was called blessed. This week, Peter is called Satan. But the truth is that Peter is both a foundation and an obstacle, both blessed and seriously flawed. Now let us consider the prophet Jeremiah. Jeremiah became a prophet at a very young age. He responded to his call with great doubts. He said, Lord God, I do not know how to speak. I am way too young to do this. But the Lord reassured him, do not say I am too young. To whomever I send you, you shall go. Do not be afraid. I am with you to deliver you. But the words that God gave Jeremiah to speak were not easy words. They were words that were very difficult. Words in which he had to prophesy and tell the people that there's going to be great destruction, judgment, that they were going to suffer many things because he had turned away from the covenant. And so the people attacked him. They beat him. They didn't like what he had to say. And they even threw him into prison. And Jeremiah began to see that his life was not turning out quite as he had hoped it would. Being a prophet was kind of cool. It was sort of a prestige thing. And suddenly, it's not really attractive at all. He's getting all of these horrible things happening to him. And since he was a prophet, he didn't expect all of this. He didn't expect to be derided. This is why we hear him today complaining to the Lord. This is why he says he has been tricked. Misery and suffering were not what he signed up for, was not on his job application. God had duped him. And those were Jeremiah's words. You duped me. What might we learn from these two troubled leaders? None of our many failings or shortcomings can be an excuse for us not to follow Jesus, because we're just not all perfect. I'm sorry, I love you all, but we're not all perfect. We have our frailties, we have our weaknesses. Imperfect as we sometimes might be, we are still called to be disciples. We are all a mixture of gifts and deficiencies, talents and liabilities. We have blessings and we have many flaws. We too often delude ourselves into thinking God is looking for only perfect disciples. God is not looking for perfect people. He won't find them. He is looking for real people. God has no illusions. God knows who we are, and God knows all of our failings. Yet, God still calls us to love, to forgive, and to grow. If Peter, whom Jesus called Satan, could go on to be a foundation of the church, then even with all of our failings and weaknesses, we can still be disciples Christ calls us to be. Jeremiah, I think, is a model for us when we find ourselves in painful places in which we never thought we would be. Maybe when our marriage is failing, we're having difficulties with our children, when our loved one is dying, when a person we loved hurts us, when a financial burden seems overwhelming, and when the aging process begins to slow us down. When we find ourselves in circumstances we never bargained for, Jeremiah tells us that we have the right to complain. You didn't think I'd say that, right? Huh? But Jeremiah truly gives us the right to complain. We have a right to tell God of our hurt and of our uncertainty. To tell God, I'm not happy, this stinks. When we are in pain, being honest is more important than being polite. Telling God that we are disappointed, that we are angry, is not a sign of disrespect. Rather, it shows that we are taking our relationship with God seriously. Seriously enough to come before God as we really are. Seriously enough to challenge God to save us. When we put our pain on the table, when we get our anger off our chest, it opens the way for us to listen to what God may say in response. God's words may be words of comfort and peace, but to reach that place, we must begin with honesty. We must tell the Lord what we really think and feel. Remember what Jesus said when he was on the cross. My God, why have you forsaken me? Jesus tells us that we must carry our cross, but Jeremiah shows us that we do not have to like it. Jesus does not want us to suffer. Jesus says, come to me, all you who labor and are burdened, and I will give you rest. But our experience shows us that we will suffer. No one is exempt from that reality. We've seen it to all of the innocent people in South Texas and other places around the world. No one is exempt from that reality of suffering. But we need not suffer alone. As a Christian community, we can reach out to one another in times of crisis, and we've seen that happen in Texas. How many people have volunteered? How many people have rescued others? How many have made incredible donations that we came out as a community to say, we know you're suffering and we want to do our part. We can extend a hand of support and comfort to those closest to us that are suffering. That should be a part of our mission as we leave Mass each weekend. That's part of our mission to do and care for those who may be suffering around us. It takes a friendly call, an encouraging card, a supporting embrace, a daily prayer will make a difference in the life of the person carrying his or her cross. They will know that they have not been duped. They will experience the love of God through us.